Hello and welcome. On the right here you will notice our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He's the reason I'm in this course and the reason I am bringing you this video at this time. My name is Dennis Wynn Paulson Jr. I'm in the CIT 336 course at BYu, Idaho. This is a web backend course, and the subject today will be concerning PHP, personal home page, or as some say pre-hypertext processor, or as some say hypertext preprocessor. Regardless, PHP is a programming language in which we can program and process things before they're rendered on HTML pages and browsers. And with that being said, as most languages do, we have arrays. Arrays are associated or part of the PHP language. The three I'm going to speak to you about today are the numeric array, the associative array, and the multidimensional array. This is a post that I put on the Week 6 discussion board. It is about the subjects in the arrays that I'm speaking of, and there is good information on each, and if you'll click on those windows, which I will do during this video, it will take you to a code ground where we can play with these things and manipulate them, erase them, whatever you want to do, that we can learn and understand these things better is the goal. Creating a numeric array is simple. Basically, it's a list. It's a list of items. An array is a list, and essentially, and in PHP, an array is actually an object. So rather than creating 100 different objects that we'd have to process and loop through and find, basically we can take those 100 items, put them in an array, and loop through and find things relatively quick. In a numeric array, there is actually an association. It is numbers. Each item in the array has an index. We keep track of these things based on their location in the array. The first item technically is in the 0 index. So basically we start with 0 for many reasons. Arrays are pointers to places in memory, and when we get there, the first item will be the first item in the array, which is at the 0 position, and then to each position from there is 1 or 2, 3 positions away. So that's one reason. There are many, but mathematically it's easier and more beautiful to do it that way. It makes more sense. But anyway, as far as the arrays go, in PHP, what we have here is a variable. We start all variables with the $sign numbers. The assignment operator, the equal sign, numbers, the variable equals. We're assigning an array. This is an array, so the variable will be an array. In this case, numbers 0 through 5. What we want to do is we have a for each loop here. The for each loop allows us to loop through arrays, and here's the array by name, and then each value that comes back we're going to list as this value, which we name right here. And so this value is one that we've created. We're just going to say dot value, that's what it equals. We can name it anything we want, but since it's the value coming back, I thought that would be appropriate. And so the for each, we're going to loop through this array. We're going to return these values as this, and then before we exit the loop or go back through the loop until the array is completed, which is what the for each will do. It will loop through each item until there are no more, and we'll return these values. And what we want to do is in that process is print each of them to the screen so we can see what each value is. So let's click on this and see what we get. Well, there we go. The value is, basically, the value is, and then it's going to tell us what the value in that position is, starting with 0. So we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that being said, what we're doing essentially is iterating through the array and returning the items in that position. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a break or two just so we can keep our code nice and clean. Don't forget the semicolons in PHP. It needs to know where to start and stop executing, and without those it will cause us trouble. But here's a couple breaks so we can see the first array from the second. And so what we're doing here is we're printing 0 through 5. If we were to take care of that 0 and remove that, it would actually give us 1 through 5 up here, but this is still in the 0 position, and I'll show you that. Right here we have numbers. Here's the second way to create an array or to alter an array, is to just list the array, use the square brackets, and put the index in there in the square brackets. So what we're saying is numbers, whatever that array, when we use the square brackets, there's our clue. This is an array, and in the 0 position we're going to assign this string, because of the quotes, we know this is a string, and the characters, it is a 0. So if we look at this second result right here where we iterate through with this for loop, we're going to get the same values. This value is, and then we're going to use value as values from this array. And we know that it's changed because we use the same array name. This is numbers. Up here, this is numbers. And so what we're doing is we're reassigning each of these positions to be a text field now. The fields that we can generate are strings, integers, floats or decimals, booleans, which are true or false, other arrays, which we'll talk about in a second, objects, null values, or other resource, or the resource value. We won't get into all those, but those are the value types we can use. If we were to take value 5 here and delete that, and let's say put value 11. Now if we change this, I want to show you when we loop through with the for loop an array, we're going to go through in order all the indexes, and you'll see that 5 through 10 is skipped. We went from 4 to 11. So when we print this out, let's see what happens. Well, what happens is it iterated through all the values that were present, printed 11 to the screen because 11 is associated with this other index. And so when we use the for each loop, that's what it's going to do. It's going to loop through each value in the array, and it's going to print the associated value at that index, which brings us to the next array, the associative array. Back here to the discussion board, the associative array basically assigns a key and a value. So what we're doing is, instead of just having numbers in order, we have keys and values. Those are also comma separated. What we're doing is when we create the array, we start with a $, ages, we assign an array right here, but now what we're doing is we are putting in a key. In this case it's John, then we use the fat arrow, the equal caret sign, John equals older, and then comma. So everything right here is essentially one spot as key and value, a comma separated value in the array. And then we do the same thing over. We have Joseph, fat arrow, old. So Joseph is associated with old. Jacob is associated with young. And here we're going to echo each of them so you can see this nice and cleanly. What we're going to do is right there, John is, and then the way we call this, I want you to pay attention to this real quick too. This is important. The John's age is, we use the dot. This is a concatenation. So it's going to plug this to whatever is behind it. And then what we're doing is we're calling the array square brackets, just like the indexes, which essentially is what we're doing. We're naming or giving a key to the indexes instead of a number. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the value associated with that number, and then we're just concatenating a break to put these on new lines. So when we run this, what we have is we have whatever is associated with the key John. So if we look up here before the comma, John is associated with older. So when we say show us John's age is ages, array ages, at the John position, the John key, give us the value associated with that. It's going to give us John's age is, what was associated with it was older. If I change this to younger, if I can spell, then what we'll get is we'll get, well, all of a sudden John's age is younger. So this is a good way to loop through or to associate values with keys. And what that allows us to do is to be dynamic in our databases and in our rendering of information in arrays, so that we can pair values, so we can know one value and we can always find the other, which may be dynamic or vice versa. But there are other ways to do that. You can use a dot order dot key or something like that that will go through and find all keys and display all values, just like the other for each loop will with the numbered array. I wanted to show you here also, here's another way to do it. Just like with the numeric array, we have the array, we list the key, and those have to be in square brackets right together. We're going to assign a new value, and this is oldest. So if you look down here, the value of John is oldest. It stayed the same down here because we changed it as we ran through the code. First we changed it to younger, which produced up here, and then we go back and we change John and make it equal oldest. So John went from younger to oldest, and that is how a associative array works. For time's sake, I'm going to be quick, and we're going to go back to the numeric array. Excuse me, multi-dimensional array. And as you can guess, they get a little more complex and more complex. With this array, what we're doing is we're going to $, name the array, assign an array. Now within the array, this looks very much like the associative array, but what we're doing is we're naming the key, and then, oh, we have another array here. So what we're doing is we're essentially putting a list, height, age, weight, inside of a list already. So we have an array, and you'll notice where the commas come up after the parentheses. So everything in parentheses, height is associated with 35, age is associated with 30, weight is associated with 39. This is one array right here, but this is inside of an array that also contains Joseph and Jacob. And so each of their dynamics in there, the way we produce these is the way we assign or manipulate these is call them, I should say. We call these by the name of the array, and then we simply just use the square brackets back to back. And what we're doing is we're saying, okay, in the array, John is the first array, and within that, John is associated with an array, height, age, and weight. So what we're doing is we want to see John's height. We want to see Joseph. Joseph has an age here. That's the second value in the array. So we just say Joseph, square brackets, age. So we list the array, and then we put the key, and then we put the value or the associated key inside of the array. And it will give us this value. It should. Let's go ahead and click execute. And there we have it. John's height. John, if you'll see here, the key, and then height. Now what was associated with John, array, height, it was 35 here. So, and that's what it gave us. It gave us 35. With Joseph, we looked at his age. Up here, Joseph's age is 32. If we change it to 33 and rerun it, I want to see that change to 33. And it does. It changed to 33. In the Jacob array, we wanted to see his weight. To check all these values, we've got the array, the key, and then within that key, the key of within that array, which is weight, and the associated value is 39. That's what we have on the screen. Sorry this ran over 7 minutes, but there was a lot to cover. I tried to go fast. Again, if you go back to the discussion board, you'll be able to see all these are there available, and if you click on the images, it should take you to exactly where I was just toying with those. And you can't hurt them, delete them, play with them, manipulate them, and I hope that this has been beneficial, and I look forward to seeing you guys around class. God bless you, and have a good night.